I would like to start by saying that we should have never integrated. We should have stayed segregated. So blacks, right here. Whites, right here. Asians, right here. Especially Chinese, all over there. And Mexicans, Hispanics, Latinos, y'all in your own place. Whites only, black only. Everyone got their own space. No integration. I'm lying. I'm just joking. Segregation was not good, and it was not good for black Americans. But by looking at segregation and what happened afterwards, I could better emphasize the importance and how segregation played a part in black economic empowerment. So let's look at that. After the United States abolished slavery, black Americans continued to be marginalized through enforced segregation. Segregation is the practice of requiring separate housing, education, and other services for people of color. It was made law several times in 18th and 19th century America, as some believed that black and white people were incapable of coexisting. It included a set of beliefs that whites were superior to blacks in terms of intelligence and morality, and regulated African Americans to the position of second-class citizens. Segregation was unofficially supported by black codes. These were laws passed throughout the South starting around 1865 that dictated most aspects of black people's lives, including where they could work and live. These codes also ensured black people's availability for cheap labor after slavery was abolished. Segregation then became official policy when it was enforced by a series of Southern laws called Jim Crow laws. Legislators segregated everything from schools to residential areas to public parks to theaters to pools to cemeteries, jails, and residential homes. Furthermore, in 1896, the Supreme Court ruled in Plessy v. Ferguson that segregation was constitutional. The ruling established the idea of separate but equal. However, blacks and whites were not granted equal treatment. Blacks were denied jobs, access to good schools, and were forced to sit behind whites in public transport facilities. Furthermore, starting in the 1930s, the Federal Home Loan Bank Board and the Homeowners Loan Corporation conspired to create maps or mark areas considered bad risk for mortgages in the practice known as redlining. The areas marked in red typically outline black neighborhoods. This kind of mapping concentrated poverty as mostly black residents in redline neighborhoods had no access to good loans, only to very expensive ones. The more cut off that black communities became from white communities, and the more that white businessmen refused to cater to black customers, the more possible it became for black entrepreneurs to create viable businesses for their own. It allowed them to create banks, barbershops, beauty parlors, funeral homes, cafes, taverns, hotels, liquor stores, and bus services. What these black businesses did was allow for the economic empowerment of black people. And these businesses played a big role in the fight for civil rights and the fight for equality. Because without them, black protesters wouldn't have the financial security to go out and protest. These black businesses provide a hotel, they provide the bus services, and they provide the bell that made it possible for these black people to continue fighting. So with that in mind, you have to understand that economic empowerment was essential and is still essential for the fight for equality. I brought up segregation because it was a time where we were forced to buy from our own. You were forced to go to black businesses. You were forced to support black businesses. And the money that came into these black businesses went back into the black community. I know things wasn't good during segregation. No, they were not good. But the idea of supporting your own is something that I want to highlight. Yes, you could have social rights. Yes, you could have civil rights. But if you don't have the money and the economic freedom, you don't really have power. You don't really have power to affect things like money does. Look at the $2 trillion that America just gave out for the coronavirus. And we're looking at, whoa, what happened to the black reparations? We're not able to get reparations because we are not an economic threat to the United States government. If we come together, pull our resources together, we'll become a threat. And that's been shown to be effective with the civil rights movement. They were able to do what they did because they were economically empowered to do what they wanted to do. We could create our own. It won't be the same as white America, but at the same time, it will allow us to slowly get the economic freedom that we want. And it's gonna take time for all this to happen. But at the same time, you gotta make the sacrifice to try to make that happen. Because if you stay complacent in what we are right now, nothing will be gained. If you don't pose an economic threat, nothing will be gained. And look at these other communities and what they have done. Look at the Mormons in Utah. They have their own space. They make their own laws. They control that whole area. But I know it's different because they didn't have the history that we had as black people. They didn't have the laws. They didn't have the police. They didn't have all that going against them. But at the same time, we fought the fight before, and we can still fight the fight to get what we want. And that's what I believe. And that's what I know. Peace out.